After graduating college, I took a few months off and flew to New Zealand to backpack a portion of the Te Araroa Trail. I arrived in New Zealand on January 1st, 2015 to begin my 462-mile backpacking trip along a portion of the Te Araroa Trail in the South Island. The journey would take 36 days, averaging 12.9 miles and 2,300 feet of elevation gain per day. My start point was Nelson and my end point was Arrowtown. My flight first landed in Auckland, where Customs inspected my decently heavy entry-level 2-person REI tent and agreed it was clean. The flight to Nelson was on a tiny little propeller plane. Once off the plane, I organized my gear and then used the airport Wi-Fi to call my parents. Finally, I was ready to leave. At this point, I was fresh and eager for my journey, determined to walk every step and never hitchhike. I think every first-time long-distance hiker starts the trail like that. Eventually, most decide to start hitchhiking sections. So I walked straight out of the airport into the Nelson eyesight, 4.4 miles away, to pick up my backcountry hut pass. The great thing about New Zealand is their huts. You can stay in all of them, other than the Great Walks and a few others, for 6 months for only $75 US. Then I went to the grocery store to buy food for 5 days. Finally, I stopped at a restaurant for lunch, eating a yummy chicken sandwich. After my lunch, I was ready to hit the trail, but I still had to walk 3 miles to the Dun Mountain Trail, which would then connect me into the Te Araroa Trail, joining at Rock's Hut along the Richmond Alpine track section. Once on Dun Mountain Trail, I had to hike 10.7 miles to Rock's Hut. At this point, I had been wearing really minimal padding trail running shoes, and the 7.4 miles of road walking were already doing a number on my feet. After a mile on the hiking trail, I switched into my normal padding trail running shoes. About halfway to Rock's Hut, I met an Israeli guy who was carrying 4 liters of water. I had just my 1-liter bottle, knowing that there are plenty of streams to fill up at along the way. We didn't reach Rock's Hut till 8 p.m., but thanks to their geographic latitude, it was still light till at least 10. The hut was quite busy, with about 8 people staying in it that night. I met a solo German TA hiker named Renee, and Mina, who was trail running the entire trail to raise money for Starship. She was with Adam, and later on her husband, who alternated running sections with her. They told me about the crazy rainstorm that hit the day before I got here, and how a river rose something like 4 meters. The first night in the hut was great, and I appreciated not having to set up my own tent. Rock's Hut even had a flush toilet with running water. Renee, Mina, and Adam left earlier in the morning, but I soon caught up to Renee, and then we caught Mina. We all traveled together to the next hut, traveling through sections of fallen down trees and some scenic water crossings, passing numerous huts on our way to Slaty Hut, 15.7 miles away. This section of the trail brought us up to the ridge tops where we could get great views of the ocean and the city of Nelson. On day 3, we were treated to some scenic low-hanging clouds in the valley as we hiked over the ridges. During this 5-day stretch, I was eating granola and some breakfast snack bars for breakfast, walnuts and some tasty beef snacks called bitlong for lunch, and peanut butter and Nutella sandwiches for dinner. I quickly realized that I'd need more food. I probably had only a little more than 2,000 calories a day, but it was sufficient for the first 5 days. After that, I made sure to get at least 3,000 calories a day, if not 4,000. This section of the trail had the infamous scramble, which Mina was worried about, but even she agreed it wasn't bad at all. We stopped at Tarn Hut, which had a small lake that I took a dip in to wash off. I also met a middle-aged couple who did the PCT before this, who I would run into frequently on the rest of my trip. There was also an older New Zealand couple that brought fresh vegetables and meat and cooked stew in the hut's stove. The next morning, I got across my first swing bridge. We continued our long pushes between huts, going all the way to Hunter's Hut, which was estimated to be 13.5 DOC hours away, even though it was only 15 miles. The nearly 6,000 feet of elevation gain and water crossings made it difficult. This day was quite sunny and hot, but luckily that's the weather I enjoy, so I pushed ahead and reached the huts before Renee and Mina and Adam. Mina and Adam reached Hunter's Hut just before dark, so it was definitely a long day. The last day of the Richmonds was here. We passed 2 huts and came to the top of a ridge and were able to see down into the valley where the highway was. Mina and Adam jogged downhill while Renee and I quickly hiked down. Then we met Mina at her support van where we had a quick snack. From the highway, there was a 6.5-mile road section into the town of St. Arnaud. Mina and Adam were going to jog it, leaving their bags in the van. I asked if I could join them, left my bag, and jogged it successfully with them. Renee hitchhiked the opposite direction to a bigger town to resupply. We got to St. Arnaud at about 7 p.m., and I went to the lodge to eat dinner, ordering broccoli cream soup, a giant burger with fries, and then 2 scoops of ice cream. The backpacker lodge seemed to be closed by the time I was done, after 9, so I went down to the campsite at Nelson Lakes National Park and camped there for $10, finally using my heavy tent. I packed up my tent and went back to St. Arnaud for breakfast at the lodge. I had their continental breakfast, which included yogurt with fruit and granola, orange juice, milk and cereal, toast and butter, 2 croissants, and a banana. I also ordered a dish that had eggs, sausage, fish, bacon, and mushrooms. Food is good. Then I went to the grocery store and bought some OSMs, 1 square meals, for my lunch over the next 5 days. OSMs have exactly 33% of the nutrition and vitamins minerals your body needs, and they're also quite tasty. I heard one person was doing the trail eating nothing but OSMs. I also bought jerky, dry roasted peanuts, and chocolate bars for dinner, and basic blocks and some other energy bars for breakfast, and jelly beans for snacks. Mina shared some jelly beans during the previous section, and I definitely had a craving for them after that. I hiked a somewhat long day to John Tate Hut, but I started to feel a sore throat coming. Plus, my stomach wasn't feeling great, probably because of eating so much breakfast and then hiking all this distance. I was thinking I might have to turn back the next morning. When I woke up, I didn't feel great, but I also didn't feel terrible. My stomach was back to normal, so I pushed on over the saddle and arrived at West Sabine Hut pretty early, like 4 p.m. or earlier. I figured I should take it easier and only travel 9 to 10 DOC hours a day to help my immune system recover. At that hut, I met a hiker who was trying to do the entire trail barefoot, but he's going super slow because of that, taking 9 days through the Richmonds instead of 5 like I did. On day 8, I hiked past Blue Lake, a gorgeous deep blue lake, and up to Waiu Pass, which involved hiking up a loose and steep scree slope. The views of Blue Lake from on top of the pass were incredible. This was some of the best scenery along the trail. The way down from Waiu Pass was even steeper, but it scrambled down solid rock instead of scree. Definitely class 3 scrambling, which I enjoyed. I reached Upper Waiu Forks, a small informal campsite, at around 4 p.m. and decided to camp there, using my tent for the second time. The PCT couple set up their tent after I had already went to sleep. Over the next 2 days, I didn't take any pictures, but I stayed at a beautiful hut called Ann Hut, which was built in 2011. It was a large, 20 sleeping bunks hut. It had bug screens on the windows, and I had the entire place to myself. I left Ann Hut at 6:15 a.m., wanting to get into town early. I made it to Boyle Village just before 3 p.m., but then I realized Boyle Village wasn't actually town, and I needed to hitch a ride to Hammer Springs to resupply. Thus, I attempted hitchhiking for the first time. Luckily, a couple I passed 30 minutes ago on the trail was coming back from a short overnight trip in a hut, and they gave me a ride, driving me straight into the city. I checked into my first and only backpacker hostel, washed my clothes, and took a shower. As my clothes washed, I walked barefoot up to a little restaurant and ordered vegetable soup and carrot cake. Then I went back to put my clothes in the dryer and headed back up to the restaurant for actual dinner, ordering a burger and milkshake. I left the hostel around 9 in the morning, eating a scone I bought the night before, and then had a 3-egg omelet served on toast with ham and mushrooms for breakfast. Then I went to the grocery store and bought 5 days worth of food. At this point, I set into a routine of trail food. Breakfast was typically basic blocks, a type of breakfast bar, and trail mix. Lunch was 3 OSM bars, and dinner was tortillas with peanut butter and Nutella, which was extremely delicious, and then some honey roasted nuts. These meals were calorie dense while still being lightweight, and I was finally getting my 3,000 calories a day. Getting to the trailhead from the city was difficult. I walked all the way from the city to the highway, and then tried to hitch a ride. After 20 minutes, a Kiwi with a small four-wheel drive picked me up and dropped me off at the trailhead. I arrived at the hut at 7 p.m., running into the PCT couple once again. The Harper Pass track is supposed to be 4 to 6 days long, so I decided to take it easy and take 5 days. I got to Harani Hut at 2 p.m., giving me plenty of time to rest. I was looking forward to the hot spring that was along the trail tomorrow. Today was also the first day I drank directly from a stream, without filtering the water first. Stopping to filter gives the sandflies time to attack you, and the PCT couple said they drank without filtering, and I've heard that most people in New Zealand don't filter, so I figured I'd stop filtering unless I'm near cattle. On day 13, I experienced the disappointment that were the hot springs. The water was warm on the surface, but quickly cooled down a few inches below. Apparently you could control the flow of the water and make it warmer, but you still have sandflies attacking you while you're trying to relax. I tried to enjoy it for 15 minutes, but I gave up and left for the next hut, which was an old hut with rats crawling around inside. So I decided to take a long 10-hour day and go to Lock Stream Hut, meaning I would exit a day early, taking 4 days total. That means I get to eat more food. Yay, food! So I ate a double dinner and read a Time magazine that someone left at the hut. I left at 6:15 in the morning to reach the road early. There were a number of river crossings, but otherwise the trail was easy. I reached the road by 1 p.m. and attempted to hitchhike, but there were very few cars. Arthur's Pass was 13.7 miles away, so I knew I could make it, but the walk would be awful. I started walking on the road, and after 2 hours, a French couple with a rental car picked me up. The views from the road were incredible. We stopped at a lookout, and the bridge was spectacular. Then I got into town and had a blueberry muffin and a small chicken sandwich. Then I had real dinner at a pizza place, a salad, fettuccine pasta, and pavora dessert with ice cream. I stayed the night at the town's DOC campsite for $6. I decided to take a 0 day at Arthur's Pass since I completed the previous section a day early. I did my laundry and ate some great breakfast, blueberry pancakes, yogurt, and a fruit smoothie. Then for lunch, a date scone, egg sandwich, ripple chips, chocolate milk, and a panini. I met some travelers at the campsite and we all went to dinner at the pizza place. I ordered a large 13-inch Hawaiian pizza and ate all but 2 slices. That night, a storm came in with strong winds and light rain. In the morning, it was still drizzling rain, so I had to pack up the tent while it was still wet. 3 of us got a ride from a French girl that we ate dinner with, but I was the only TA hiker. She dropped me off at the Harper River trailhead, and I set off in the light rain. There were some incredible views of the sun breaking through the clouds and reaching into the valley. I arrived at Hamilton Hut early in the afternoon and read Nature and Birds magazine. Then I attempted to play solitaire with the cards that were at the hut, but couldn't really figure out the rules without having the internet for reference. Later on, a Kiwi father named David and his daughter arrived and I talked with them for a while. He's been section hiking the TA in his free time. The next morning brought perfectly clear skies. One section called the Pinnacles was decently scenic. There were frequent river crossings as the trail followed the river down the valley. I arrived at Harper Road and set up my tent at a free campsite before 2 p.m. I haven't met any TA hikers in quite a while. Today was quite windy with the wind blowing me a few steps off my track sometimes. From Harper Road, it took me a while to find the next road, but once I did, it was close to 14 miles of walking on dirt road. The trail leads to a hazard zone, meaning there's a large river called the Rakaia that stands between you and the other side where the trail continues. You have to get a ride all the way around the river. I met a German guy also hiking the TA, and we decided to hitch to Methven, which is a large town at the bottom of the river. We got a ride from a lady who's section hiking the TA, and then hitched another ride with the owner of a lodge in Methven, where we decided to share a double room for $30 each. For dinner, I had delicious garlic bread and a chicken burger and fries. Then I resupplied with 3 days worth of my typical trail food. Reaching the trailhead on the other side of the Rakaia was a challenge. I walked 2 miles out of town until I got a ride to the beginning of the dirt road. I continued walking till a pickup with the German TA hiker came along, and I hopped in the back. Along with him was another German TA hiker that he's previously met. Riding in the back of that pickup truck along the windy and scenic dirt road was tons of fun. But unfortunately, he wasn't driving all the way to the trailhead, so I had to walk 6 more miles to the trailhead. Once at the trail, it started to rain a bit and the temperatures dropped close to freezing overnight. The next morning was sunny and pleasant, although still quite cold in the morning. My trail running shoes apparently weren't perfect for me, since they were starting to wear into my Achilles tendon. They wore through my sock and started cutting into my skin. Luckily, I could use my pocket knife to cut the back of them and prevent them from rubbing further into my skin. I reached Manuka Hut early in the afternoon. A grandma with her 2 grandchildren were there, and she was letting the kids drink directly from the stream, further confirming the fact that it's safe to drink the water without filtering. The 2 German guys reached the hut before me and kept going. I called it a day and relaxed. I quickly finished the rest of the trail and started hiking some of the road section until the grandma caught up with me, and then I got a ride in her car to the next trailhead. I completed the Clearwater track and reached the Rangitata, another hazard zone. I walked up to Mount Potts Lodge, only to discover that it was closed. Then I walked back and hiked 1 hour into the Rangitata and camped on a delta just before the main river. The German guys were saying that the Rangitata would probably be crossable, so I decided that I would try crossing it, even though I was alone. It was super windy at the river, but I managed to set up the tent with plenty of rocks and using all of the guy lines. I awoke to a perfect day and I started to cross the river, but I had to use my sleeping pad to float my backpack across, since the water was above my belly button. I was nearly swimming, but it was extremely slow moving, so it was doable. After that, there was another crossing that was above my knees but extremely fast moving. I slowly made it across. After 3 hours, I made it to the other side and started walking towards Mesopotamia, a small farming area without any stores. I needed to get a ride to a city to resupply, since I only brought 3 days worth of food. A retired couple picked me up and dropped me off at Peel Forest Camp, which had a small restaurant but no grocery store. I ate a chicken burger and then waited for 2 hours to get a ride to Geraldine, a larger city. I camped at the holiday park, which was $17 but includes hot showers. I bought my food and then even watched some television at the holiday park. Theoretically, I should have gone back up the Rangitata and continued the trail, but my shoes are wearing out, so I decided I needed to buy some new shoes. I hitched a ride into Christchurch, the biggest town in the South Island, and I bought some Morale trail running shoes and then got a single-room hostel. I ate a burrito from a food truck and booked a bus to Tekapo. I would be skipping the Two Thumbs track since getting a ride back up the seldom-traveled Rangitata would be too difficult. I ate a yogurt parfait for breakfast and caught the bus to Tekapo. It was a nice scenic ride and definitely worth paying for instead of attempting to hitch. I arrived in Tekapo at 1 p.m. and started hiking on the road till I reached the dirt road. I had the impression that this section would be a hiking trail, but it was actually just dirt roads that cars are able to drive on. Today was a hot day, and I reached the hut called Telephone Hut at 4 p.m. It's a small 2-bunk hut that doesn't have any windows and is completely dark if you shut the door. I decided to take a nap here until sunset so that I could watch the sunset and then hike in the night, seeing all the stars and avoiding the heat. The sunset wasn't anything special. It seemed like there were fewer stars here than in the northern hemisphere. I stopped at midnight and set up camp along the road. In the morning, I awoke to a wonderful view of Mount Cook and Lake Pukaki. After that, I stopped at Pines Camp, a free campground at the bottom edge of Lake Pukaki, and I took a little swim in the lake, but it was a bit too cold. My right knee's muscle started to complain during this stretch of trail. The walk into Twizel was much shorter than expected, even though I was on Boring's bicycle trails. I arrived in the morning and used their free Wi-Fi at the public library. Twizel's a nice little town. Today was a lazy day. I decided to skip the Lake Ohau track since it sounded like more of the same boring bicycle trails. So I left Twizel around lunch, hitching a ride towards Lake Ohau, and then I hiked 2 hours on the trail to the informal campsite. The campsite was decent, but there were quite a few sandflies. I took yet another lazy day and set up camp. Apparently 2 people arrived that night after I already went to sleep. One of them was also named Andrew, and he was also from America. But he was hiking the other direction and wasn't awake when I left, so I didn't meet him. The other person was Cam from Christchurch, who did the PCT where he met his girlfriend. Then they came to the TA, but they broke up on the trail. They both travel super light, using a tarp as a tent and more. This section of the trail had a small river crossing, and then a steep ascent up the other side of the riverbank. New Zealand trails are a bit crazy, and sure enough, it went straight up the steep riverbank. I stopped at the private hut along the Breast Hill track and set up my tent outside the hut. On day 29, I slept in, knowing that my hike would be short. I was only going to Top Timaru Hut, which took me just 4 hours to reach. The views over the saddle before the hut were pretty great. At the hut, I ran into David, the Kiwi who I met at Hamilton Hut with his daughter. David cooked one of his backcountry meals and shared some of it with me since he couldn't finish it, but honestly it wasn't much better than my non-cooked food. David continued hiking later in the afternoon, but I took a lazy day and relaxed in the hut. The next day's trail involved steep climbs and descents along the riverbank, but I made good pace. The climb up to Stodie's hut was ridiculously steep, 1 solid hour of straight uphill. New Zealand apparently hasn't learned about switchbacks. I got to the hut relatively early due to my fast pace, and so I decided to push it to the next hut. The trail takes you up Breast Hill, which normally has great views of Lake Kauia. Unfortunately, it was cloudy, but the views were still good. I took some pictures of myself on top of the hill, and then went down to Pakitui Hut. At the hut, we had 3 northbound hikers and 3 southbound hikers. The French and Swedish couple talked about how they steal toilet paper from bathrooms in town and roll it up to use it on the trail. The American girl who was previously dating Cam arrived at the hut. She said her base weight was probably around 6 pounds, ridiculously light. She has hiked the PCT 4 times already. She also doesn't use a stove, but she eats dry ramen. The trail down to Lake Kauia was steep, but it actually had some switchbacks for once. At Hauia, there is a hotel that has camping sites for just $10, a pretty good deal. My right shin's muscle was feeling sore, something that I've never felt before. So I stopped there and ate some sort of veggie pastry for lunch, and then had a veggie burger with fries for dinner and New York cheesecake for dessert. I ate continental breakfast at Hauia, having yogurt and fruit, milk and cereal, delicious muffins, toast and butter, and orange juice. Along a boring bicycle trail towards Wanaka, I met an older New Zealand couple hiking northbound who are taking pictures of every TA hiker that they met. If I decided to hitch that section, I would have never met them. As I crossed the Clutha River, there was a 15 to 20 foot bridge that people jumped off of, so I took my shoes off and jumped in. Despite the boring trail, these highlights made the day fun. Later, I arrived in Wanaka, which is definitely a rich touristy town. I went to a Mexican restaurant and had a delicious veggie burrito that had sweet potatoes in it. I also had a churro with chocolate sauce drizzled on it and ice cream on the side. Eating backpacking food will be difficult after this. I ate some breakfast and started hiking along Lake Wanaka. The views of the lake are nice, but rain soon started to drizzle in. I reached the trailhead at 1 p.m. and started hiking through the rain. The trail was definitely slippery when wet, but not impassable. You could tell that the river below was flooding since it was tinted brown from the additional dirt mixing in with the forceful water, but luckily there weren't any river crossings on this trail. The French couple were already at the hut and ended up watching a movie on their phone. There was a good thriller book that someone left at the hut about a hostage situation, so I read that book during the day and finished it just before 10 p.m. Sunlight? Clear skies? No way! For this stretch of trail, I brought dehydrated milk with some granola fruit cereal, so I had milk and cereal in the morning and it was excellent. Since the weather was nice, I continued to Rose's hut and arrived in the late afternoon. There was a girl from Australia, and then the American lightweight girl arrived, having hiked all the way from Glendew Bay, and continued onwards towards Macetown. She definitely hikes fast thanks to her light pack. As a sharp contrast to the American girl, an older German guy arrived carrying 4 liters of water, fresh onions for cooking, and other excessive heavy gear. His pack felt heavier than mine, and he didn't even have a tent in it. Oh, rain. A rainstorm rolled in through the night, and it rained till 10 in the morning. Luckily there was another drama thriller book in the hut, which I was able to read and keep me entertained while waiting for the rain to pass. By 11 a.m. there are patches of sunlight, so I decided to leave for Macetown while I had the chance. After stepping outside, I noticed there was snow on the tops of the mountains. At the top of the saddle, it was even cold enough for snow to be falling, but not sticking. Macetown is an abandoned mining town, and it has a few old stone houses. I set up camp in one of the stone houses, and the French couple joined me. The end is finally here. I left Macetown and made it to Arrowtown just after lunch. In total, I hiked 462 miles with 8,500 feet of elevation gain, averaging close to 13 miles a day with 2,300 feet of elevation gain. My Te Araroa journey ended in Arrowtown, a nice little touristy town which has one of the best pie bakeries in New Zealand. Overall, the Te Araroa was one of the best experiences of my life. This was my first long-distance trail, and it's difficult to describe how fulfilling and addicting the trail was. It's one of those things you simply have to experience for yourself, and then you'll understand. The views are good, and the exercise is appreciated, but it's the adventures along the way, the people you meet, the escape from normal life, the peacefulness of having no schedule, and the simplicity of having one single objective: to keep walking.